This is Dreamtime Science, where tonight's most interesting discoveries become tomorrow's dreams. I've got something particularly engaging to share with you. You know what's fascinating? I've been thinking about all the things we can never fully understand, no matter how hard we try. There's something quite beautiful in knowing that some mysteries might always be just beyond our reach. And tonight, I'd love to share why that idea feels both humbling and inspiring to me. If these gentle explorations bring you comfort, a quiet like or subscription would mean the world to me. Your support helps keep these peaceful journeys flowing. Let's prepare for tonight's journey. Find your most comfortable position, let tension float away from your body, and take 3 slow, peaceful breaths. The night is ancient, and it stretches out before you, velvet and fathomless, a tapestry embroidered with the shimmer of unreachable stars. In this hush, at the borderland between waking and sleep, the mind finds itself wandering the shadowy corridors of the unknown. Not merely the unknown of far galaxies or uncharted seas, but the deeper, more intimate mysteries that have always surrounded us, whispering from the edges of firelight, lurking behind the closed doors of perception, calling to us from the vastness within and without. For as long as humans have been able to wonder, the unknown has been both a source of terror and a wellspring of possibility. The first flickers of consciousness, perhaps in some ancient hominin crouched in the safety of a cave, would have been attended by the knowledge that there were things unseen and unknowable outside the fragile boundary of the hearth's glow. The rustle in the dark, the shifting wind, the shadow that crept across the moon, all these spoke of a world fundamentally mysterious, a world where every certainty was ringed by the unknown, like an island in a boundless sea. The earliest myths, those stories woven around the fire in the time before written words, are echoes of this encounter with the unknown. Consider the story of Prometheus, who defied the gods to bring fire to humanity. Fire, an elemental transformation, both a tool and a terror, was not yet understood, its origins and its nature shrouded in the ineffable. Prometheus's theft is more than a tale of rebellion. It is a mythic rendering of our first foray into the unknown, a step from darkness into the light of knowledge, fraught with peril and promise alike. The flames that warmed the cave and warded off predators also cast new shadows, opening new questions even as they answered old fears. Or think of the Labyrinth of Crete, where the Minotaur lurked at the center, half man and half beast, unknown and unknowable. The labyrinth is a recurring motif, an emblem of the mind's passage through uncertainty, the way in which each question leads to deeper enigmas, each answer revealing new twists and blind corners. To step into the labyrinth is to abandon the surety of the familiar, to risk losing oneself in the hope of meeting and perhaps mastering the monster at the heart of confusion. Across cultures, the unknown took shape in monsters and gods, spirits and omens. The Norse imagined the great serpent Jörmungandr encircling the world, its tail held in its jaws, a symbol of the infinite, the unreachable, the cyclical nature of mystery. The Egyptians peopled the night with deities who traveled the sky in solar boats, battling chaos and darkness so that the sun might rise again. The stars themselves became the eyes of ancestors or distant gods, watching, perhaps guiding, perhaps indifferent. In all these tales, the unknown is not simply a void to be feared, but a presence, alive, active, sometimes benevolent, sometimes hostile, but always compelling. As the centuries passed, the torch of curiosity was never extinguished. The unknown became a challenge, a riddle to be solved. The ancient Greeks, inheritors of the mythic tradition, transformed that tradition into the beginnings of philosophy and science. They coined the word cosmos to describe the ordered universe, but they also gave us chaos, the primordial gap, the gaping unknown from which all order arises. To them, the unknown was not merely a lack of knowledge, but a necessary counterpart to understanding, a space that called forth questions, and in time, answers. Yet even as knowledge grew, the unknown remained. In the Renaissance, as telescopes and microscopes revealed new worlds, both vast and minute, the sense of mystery only deepened. Galileo, peering through his crude lenses at the pockmarked moon and the swirling bands of Jupiter, discovered not the end of questions, but whole new frontiers. Every discovery revealed the limitations of what was known, hinting at the immensity of what yet remained to be explored. It is this dance, forever poised between the comfort of the known and the allure of the unknown, that infuses so much of our art and literature, our dreams and nightmares. Nowhere is this more vividly expressed than in the realm of science fiction, a genre that flourishes in the fertile soil of uncertainty. The unknown, in science fiction, is both the setting and the antagonist, a canvas upon which our deepest hopes and fears are painted. Consider for a moment the haunting beauty of 2001: A Space Odyssey. In the film's opening, an enigmatic black monolith appears among a tribe of early hominins, its smooth, impenetrable surface radiating an intelligence utterly foreign. The monolith is the unknown incarnate, silent, inscrutable, a cipher that defies explanation. Its presence catalyzes a leap in understanding, a sudden, violent birth of consciousness and technology. In this vision, the unknown is both a gift and a test, a force that nudges evolution forward while remaining itself forever mysterious. As the story unfolds, we travel with humanity's descendants to the moon, where another monolith is unearthed, and then outward to the orbit of Jupiter and beyond. Each stage is marked by the same pattern, a confrontation with the unknown that simultaneously expands the boundaries of human capability and underscores our essential ignorance. The final act, in which astronaut David Bowman is transported through a surreal, light-filled corridor and transformed into the enigmatic star child, is a meditation on the ultimate unknowability of the cosmos and of ourselves. The film refuses to resolve its mysteries. Instead, it invites us to dwell within them, to accept that some questions may never find answers. In this way, 2001: A Space Odyssey captures something fundamental about the human relationship to the unknown. It is not merely an obstacle to be overcome, but a source of awe and humility. The unknown is the wellspring from which creativity and wonder flow. It is the dark soil in which the seeds of knowledge are planted. Without it, there would be no questions, and without questions, no growth. Yet, for all its grandeur, the unknown can also be unsettling, even terrifying. There is a reason that the phrase "ignorance is bliss" has endured through the centuries, echoing in the writings of poets and philosophers alike. To know is to risk. To see is, often, to lose innocence. The more we learn, the more we are confronted by the complexity and ambiguity of the world. Sometimes, ignorance is a kind of shelter, a soft cocoon against the harshness of reality. This idea finds its echo in the myth of Pandora, who, out of curiosity, opens a forbidden box and unleashes all the world's woes. Only hope remains, fluttering at the bottom, a reminder that even in the face of the unknown's dangers, there is something irrepressible in the human spirit that yearns to know, to open the box, to peer behind the veil. And yet, the cost of knowing is real. Every revelation can bring with it disillusionment, loss, or fear. The tension between the longing for knowledge and the comfort of ignorance is woven into the fabric of our existence. It is there in the hesitant step of a child venturing into the dark for the first time, in the sleepless nights of philosophers pondering the limits of reason, in the trembling hands of scientists exploring dangerous new realms. Every age has its own frontiers, its own forbidden boxes and beckoning monoliths. But what precisely is the unknown? Is it simply that which we have not yet discovered, Or is it something more profound, a fundamental aspect of reality, an intrinsic limit to understanding? In mathematics and physics, the unknown often appears as the x in an equation, the variable to be solved for. In daily life, it takes the form of unanswered questions, of mysteries large and small, why the sky is blue, what lies beyond death, how consciousness arises from matter. There are, it seems, different species of the unknown. There is the unknown that is merely undiscovered, waiting patiently for the tools and the minds that will one day reveal its secrets. There is the unknown that is, in principle, unknowable, locked away by the limits of observation, or by the inherent randomness of quantum mechanics, or by the boundaries of language and thought. And there is the unknown that is willfully ignored, hidden behind the walls of taboo or denial, the things we do not wish to know because knowing would shatter our comforts. The interplay of these forms is what gives life its richness and complexity. The unknown is not a blank canvas, but a living landscape of shifting contours and hidden depths. It calls to us, sometimes softly, sometimes with the force of a tidal wave. It frightens and fascinates, inspires and unsettles. To be human is to live in the shadow of the unknown, to be both its child and its challenger. This is why, throughout history, so much energy has been devoted to mapping the boundaries of knowledge. The earliest maps, drawn on scraps of parchment or clay, were ringed by dragons and serpents, warnings that here be monsters, a poetic admission that beyond the edge of the charted world lay dangers and wonders alike. The unknown was not merely an absence, but a presence, a territory to be respected even as it was slowly claimed. In the modern world, the dragons have not vanished. They have merely changed shape. They haunt the margins of scientific understanding, the paradoxes and puzzles that defy easy solution. They appear in the gaps between data points, in the anomalies that hint at deeper truths. They reside in the chasms between what we can measure and what we can imagine. And always they remind us that the unknown is not the enemy of knowledge, but its companion. There is a curious comfort in this. Even as we push outward, mapping the genome, sequencing the cosmos, plumbing the depths of the ocean, there will always be horizons we cannot cross, questions we cannot answer. The unknown is not a flaw in the fabric of reality, but a feature, a guarantee that there will always be new stories to tell, new mysteries to ponder, new dreams to chase. As you drift now in this gentle twilight of the mind, consider the ways in which the unknown has shaped your own life. The choices you have made, the paths you have taken or not taken, the people you have loved and the fears you have faced, all are shaped by the mysteries that surround you. The unknown is not out there in distant galaxies or mythic labyrinths, but here, woven into the very texture of being. Tonight, as the world outside grows quiet and the stars wheel overhead, let yourself rest in the presence of the unknown. It is older than the earth, vaster than the sky, more intimate than your own heartbeat. It is the silence between words, the pause between thoughts, the gentle invitation to wonder. Beyond the horizon of what is known, there lies a landscape of possibility, shifting, luminous, unfinished. And it is in the company of this enigma that the journey continues, ever onward, toward the next question, the next adventure, the next encounter with the infinite. In the hush of night, as shadows grow long and thoughts drift slowly from the conscious world, we find ourselves poised at the edge of a peculiar labyrinth, a place where certainty dissolves and the familiar borders of knowledge become soft and shifting. Here, in this labyrinth of uncertainty, every corridor leads to new riddles, every chamber holds a paradox, and the very walls themselves seem to shimmer with the possibilities and limitations of human understanding. Let us begin with a puzzle as old as philosophy itself, a conundrum that has echoed from the marble halls of ancient Athens to the libraries of our present day. Imagine, if you will, a ship, an elegant wooden vessel, perhaps, arching gracefully across the blue Aegean, its timbers creaking under the sun. This is the ship of Theseus, a legend not just of adventure, but of identity. Over many years, as the ship sails and weathers storms, its planks are replaced one by one. Each time a board rots or a mast splinters, a new piece is carefully fitted in its place until eventually not a single part of the original remains. The question arises, whispered by philosophers through the centuries: is this vessel, now made entirely of new material, still the ship of Theseus? The mind teeters at this threshold. On the one hand, the ship's shape and purpose have persisted, its name and story unbroken. On the other, nothing of its original substance survives. The paradox beckons us to ask, what makes an object itself? Is it the matter that composes it, or the form and function, or perhaps something more elusive, continuity in the mind of the beholder? If someone had kept all the discarded planks in a dusty warehouse and one day reassembled them into a ship, which would be the true ship of Theseus, the one with the original matter, or the one with the unbroken history? This question is no idle musing. It touches the heart of all our knowledge, for in a world where even the simplest things can slip through our definitions, how can we ever claim certainty? The ship of Theseus is a mirror held up to our own sense of self, for our bodies too are in a state of constant renewal. Cells die and are replaced, thoughts flicker and fade, yet somehow we feel the thread of identity, the unbroken narrative of I running through the years. The paradox reminds us that knowledge is not always as solid as it seems. It is woven of stories, assumptions and conventions as much as it is of facts. Let us step deeper into the labyrinth, where the air grows thinner and the riddles more subtle. Here, in a shadowed chamber, sits a box, sealed, unremarkable, and yet inside the very foundations of reality tremble with possibility. This is the arena of Schrödinger's cat, a thought experiment conjured by the Austrian physicist Erwin Schrödinger in the early 20th century. Within the box, a cat is placed alongside a vial of poison, a Geiger counter, and a single radioactive atom. The fate of the cat is bound to the atom. If the atom decays, the Geiger counter triggers, the vial breaks, and the cat dies. If the atom does not decay, the cat lives. But in the deep logic of quantum mechanics, until we open the box and look, the atom exists in a superposition, both decayed and not decayed, both possible outcomes shimmering side by side. So too, says Schrödinger, does the cat exist in a liminal state, both alive and dead, both fates entangled, a living paradox. Only when the box is opened, when the veil of uncertainty is pierced by observation, does the universe choose a reality. The lesson here is unsettling. In the quantum realm, the act of knowing alters the thing itself. The boundaries of knowledge are not just shaped by ignorance, but by the very nature of reality, which hides not just answers, but even the questions themselves behind a curtain of probability until we dare to look. Pause now and consider the implications. If the fabric of the universe is stitched together with uncertainty, then knowledge itself is a kind of negotiation, a truce between what is and what might be. The labyrinth does not yield to simple maps. Each path branches, each turn splits again, and the walls themselves shift in the flickering light of consciousness. As you wander further, the corridors twist and spiral, and you find yourself in a chamber where the air is thick with invisible currents. Here, the paradoxes are not only philosophical, but mathematical, woven into the very equations that describe the world. One such paradox is the butterfly effect, a delicate concept that flutters at the heart of chaos theory. Imagine the beating of a butterfly's wings in distant Brazil, so gentle, so slight, that it seems inconsequential. Yet, in the tangled mathematics of weather, this subtle movement might, through a chain of amplifying consequences, help shape a tornado in Texas weeks later. This is the realm of chaos, where small changes in initial conditions can snowball into vast, unpredictable outcomes. The equations themselves are deterministic, given perfect knowledge of every variable, the future could, in theory, be calculated. But the tiniest error in measurement, the most minuscule oversight, grows exponentially, rendering long-term prediction impossible. In the dance of the atmosphere, or the rolling of dice, or the flocking of birds, order and disorder whirl together, inseparable. Chaos theory does not mean that the universe is random, but rather that it is sensitive, so sensitive that even the limits of our measuring instruments, the faintest tremor in our assumptions, can lead us astray. Here, the labyrinth of uncertainty becomes not just a metaphor, but a mathematical reality. The weather is a poem written on water, its future always dissolving, always out of reach. The butterfly effect is not confined to storms and tempests. It touches every system where complexity breeds unpredictability, ecosystems, economies, even the workings of our own minds. A single neuron firing, a word spoken in haste, a glance exchanged across a crowded room, these tiny acts can ripple outward, shaping the destinies of nations or the fate of a single heart. Knowledge, in such a world, is always provisional, always incomplete. Yet even as chaos reigns, patterns emerge, fractals in the branching of trees, rhythms in the beating of a heart, spirals in the whirlpool of a galaxy. The labyrinth is not without structure, but its logic is not always human logic. It whispers that certainty is an illusion, and that to know is to accept a measure of not knowing, to walk among shadows as well as light. Quantum mechanics, too, is a twisting corridor in our labyrinth. Here, particles are not so much things as possibilities, clouds of probability that collapse into reality only when measured. The principle of uncertainty, first articulated by Werner Heisenberg, tells us that certain pairs of properties, position and momentum, cannot both be known with arbitrary precision. To measure one is to lose clarity in the other, not because of any flaw in our instruments, but because of the deep structure of the universe. This is not a failure of knowledge, but a feature of reality itself. The world, at its smallest scale, is woven from uncertainty. The more closely we look, the more elusive the truth becomes. The electron is both here and there, the photon both particle and wave, the future both open and constrained by the present. The act of observation is a kind of participation, a thread woven into the warp and weft of the cosmos. Such mysteries are not confined to the quantum realm. Even in the world of the everyday, uncertainty pervades. The philosopher Zeno, long before the birth of quantum theory, offered his own paradoxes. In one, Achilles, swiftest of mortals, races a tortoise who has been given a head start. Each time Achilles reaches the point where the tortoise was, the tortoise has moved a little further ahead. In logic, it would seem Achilles can never catch the tortoise. An infinite sequence of steps, each smaller than the last, stretches into eternity. Yet in reality, Achilles overtakes the tortoise easily. The paradox reveals the tension between infinite division in mathematics and the finite span of physical reality, another subtle boundary of knowledge, another turning in the labyrinth. In the world of mathematics, paradoxes abound. Consider the famous liar paradox. This sentence is false. If the sentence is true, then it must be false. If it is false, then it must be true. Language, which we trust to convey meaning and truth, can twist back on itself, undermining certainty. In the labyrinth of uncertainty, even the tools of thought sometimes fail us, leaving us in a hall of mirrors, where each answer reflects into another question. But the labyrinth is not a place of despair. It is a place of wonder, where the limits of knowledge become the edges of the map, and the unknown beckons us forward. Scientists and philosophers, poets and mathematicians, all have wandered these corridors, seeking not just answers, but the right questions. Each paradox is a doorway, each uncertainty a key. The ship of Theseus asks what it means to persist through change. Schrödinger's cat asks what it means to be real. Chaos theory asks how we can know a world that is both lawful and unpredictable. As you drift deeper into sleep, Let your thoughts wander through these corridors. In the labyrinth of uncertainty, you are not lost, but exploring, following threads of curiosity into the heart of mystery. Knowledge is not a fortress to be conquered, but a landscape to be travelled, with peaks of clarity and valleys of confusion, sudden vistas opening out onto new horizons. There is comfort in knowing that uncertainty is not a flaw, but a feature of the cosmos. It humbles us, yes, but it also frees us from the tyranny of perfect knowledge, from the illusion that everything can be pinned down and catalogued. It invites us to listen, to wonder, to dwell in the questions as much as the answers. As you pass through the winding halls, you might hear the echo of another ancient paradox, the paradox of the heap or sorites. If you remove one grain from a heap of sand, it is still a heap. Remove another, and at some point the heap becomes a mere handful, then a single grain, then nothing at all. Where is the boundary? The line between heap and not heap is as blurred as the line between night and morning, self and other, known and unknown. So in this labyrinth we learn to live with ambiguity, to find beauty in the unresolved. Each paradox is a lantern, casting shadows as well as light, guiding us onward. Certainty, in the end, is not the destination, but the journey itself, a path winding through riddles, always leading to new questions. And as you continue to drift, the labyrinth calls you onward, promising stranger wonders and deeper mysteries in the chambers yet to come. The journey through uncertainty is never truly finished, for each answer opens onto another question, and the map of knowledge is always being redrawn. The walls breathe with possibility, the corridors open into new realms, and the night is full of silent, beckoning doors. There is a peculiar restlessness in the human spirit, a gentle ache that stirs us to question, to seek, to wander beyond the comforting walls of what is known. It is this age-old yearning to comprehend that has propelled us across deserts and seas into the depths of atoms and the cosmic ballet of galaxies. There is perhaps no greater adventure than the quest for comprehension, no finer tapestry than the one woven from our attempts to illuminate that which lies in shadow. Let us drift backward in time, through the veils of centuries, to a city perched on the bright edge of the Mediterranean, Alexandria. Here, in the 3rd century BCE, the world's wisdom was gathered in a single sanctuary, the Library of Alexandria. Imagine its colonnades and sunlit courtyards, the dry, papyrus-scented air humming with the murmur of scholars. Scrolls from across the known world lined its shelves. Babylonian star charts, Egyptian treatises on medicine, Greek musings on geometry and philosophy, all coexisted side by side, a testament to humanity's hunger for understanding. Within these walls, thinkers like Eratosthenes devised experiments so elegant their echoes resound to this day. Eratosthenes, a modest librarian, was gripped by a simple question: how large is the earth? He had heard from travellers in Sienne that on the summer solstice the sun stood directly overhead, casting no shadow in wells. Yet in Alexandria the sun's rays did cast a shadow, even at noon on the same day. With a measured staff he calculated the angle of the sun's shadow in Alexandria, compared it to the absence of a shadow in Sienne, and, with measured distances and the geometry of circles, he inferred the circumference of the earth itself, all with nothing more than sunlight, a stick, and the quiet logic of reason. The library itself was a tool, one of the first and greatest, but tools have many forms. Some are intangible, like the methodical unfolding of logic or the delicate lattice-work of mathematics. Others are tangible, the lens ground by hand, the astrolabe etched in bronze. With each epoch, our tools grew more intricate, more attuned to the subtleties nature concealed. The astrolabe, for example, became a navigator's companion, mapping the heavens, translating the bewildering sweep of stars into bearings for ships. Through it, the night sky became a chart, and the world's edges curled outward, inviting exploration. Centuries passed, and the thirst for knowledge surged through new minds. The Renaissance dawned like a second sunrise, and with it came a revolution in curiosity. Galileo Galilei, peering through a crude telescope of his own construction, beheld the moons of Jupiter and the rugged face of the moon. These were not the perfect spheres of ancient dogma, but worlds in their own right, pockmarked and dynamic. The telescope, a cylinder of glass, wood, and wonder, transformed the sky from a painting to a place. But the most profound tools were not always material. The scientific method, an edifice built from skepticism and patience, rose in prominence. No longer did knowledge rest solely on authority or tradition. Now it demanded evidence, repeatability, doubt. Francis Bacon and René Descartes, with their treatises, urged us to interrogate the world, to let nature answer for herself through experiment. The quest for comprehension became, at its heart, an act of humility. We do not dictate to the universe, we listen for its whispered truths. Some experiments, though simple in design, have the power to change everything. Consider for a moment the tale of Thomas Young and his double-slit experiment. In the early 19th century, the nature of light was fiercely debated. Was it a stream of particles, as Newton insisted, or a wave, as Huygens proposed? Young, a physician and polymath, sought resolution not in philosophical discourse, but in careful demonstration. He allowed light to pass through two narrow slits, side by side, and watched as it painted a pattern of alternating bright and dark bands on a screen beyond. These fringes, interference patterns, were the signature of waves, the result of crests and troughs mingling, sometimes amplifying, sometimes erasing each other. With this simple arrangement, a candle, a card with twin apertures, a distant wall, Young revealed light's secret. It was not merely a particle, but a wave that danced and wove through space. Yet, as centuries flowed on, the double-slit experiment would be revisited with ever greater subtlety. When physicists sent not beams of light, but single photons, tiny quanta, through the slits, the pattern persisted, as if each photon interfered with itself. Stranger still, if one watched to see which slit the photon passed through, the wave pattern vanished, replaced by two mundane bands. Here, at the threshold of quantum mechanics, the act of observation itself seemed to conjure reality from possibility. The universe, it appeared, was not merely to be watched, but participated in. The tools of inquiry, like the questions themselves, grew more audacious. Where once a stick and shadow sufficed, now the world demanded instruments that could peer beneath the skin of matter itself. The microscope, with its stacked lenses, revealed a new kingdom of life, cells, bacteria, the intricate machinery of the living. The spectroscope, by splitting light into its spectral colors, allowed us to read the chemical signatures of distant stars, turning the night sky into a cosmic laboratory. In the 20th century, as our hunger for comprehension deepened, we built machines of staggering ambition. Beneath the French-Swiss border, in a ring 27 kilometers in circumference, the Large Hadron Collider hums and crackles at the edge of human capability. Here, within a subterranean cathedral of magnets and detectors, protons are accelerated to near the speed of light, then smashed together in orchestrated collisions. Each impact is a fleeting act of creation, a window into the primordial energies that once flashed at the birth of the universe. With each experiment, each instrument, the unknown is not merely banished, it is transformed. The act of measurement itself shapes what can be known. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle tells us that, at the quantum scale, to know one aspect of a particle precisely is to lose sight of another. Precision and mystery are partners in a waltz, each step forward revealing new shadows at the edges of the dance floor. The quest for comprehension is not a solitary journey. It is a chorus of minds, a symphony of questions and answers, each experiment a note in the grand melody of discovery. Consider the story of Rosalind Franklin, whose X-ray diffraction images of DNA revealed the molecule's helical structure. Her photographs, made possible by painstaking experimentation, allowed Watson and Crick to model the double helix. The secret of heredity, the code of life itself, was revealed not by a single flash of insight, but by the interplay of observation, inference, and the unceasing refinement of technique. Nor is the journey always straightforward. Sometimes the tools we wield reveal not clarity, but confusion. When the Michelson-Morley experiment failed to detect the luminiferous ether, a hypothetical medium once believed to carry light waves, it upended an entire framework of physics. This null result, a seeming failure, became the seed from which Einstein's theory of relativity would blossom. In science, even disappointment is fertile ground. Through all these stories, there is a recurring motif. The boundary between the known and the unknown is not fixed, but ever shifting. Each experiment, each observation is a bridge thrown out into the fog. Sometimes it lands on solid ground. Sometimes it reveals only more mist. The tools we create are not mere extensions of our senses, but of our imagination. The radio telescope, for instance, tunes in to the static and whispers of the cosmos, capturing signals that have travelled for billions of years. With these instruments, we have heard the faint echo of the Big Bang, the cosmic microwave background, a relic of the universe's fiery birth. The universe, once a silent expanse, now sings to us in frequencies beyond the reach of the human ear. Yet no matter how powerful our tools, the quest for comprehension remains an act of interpretation. Data must be sifted, patterns discerned, explanations tested and discarded. The language of mathematics, abstract, rigorous, and beautiful, becomes the code in which nature's laws are written. It is through equations that we predict eclipses, navigate spacecraft, and model the orbits of electrons. Sometimes the search for understanding leads us into paradox. The quantum world, as revealed by experiments like the double slit, defies our everyday logic. Particles behave as waves. Probabilities replace certainties. Einstein himself, though architect of relativity, bristled at the indeterminacy at the heart of quantum mechanics. God does not play dice with the universe, he insisted. Yet nature seems to roll her cosmic dice all the same. Other times, our quest uncovers symmetries and harmonies so profound they border on the sublime. The standard model of particle physics, assembled through decades of careful experiment and theory, brings together the forces and constituents of matter in a single, intricate framework. The discovery of the Higgs boson at the Large Hadron Collider, a fleeting particle that grants mass to others, was not merely a technical achievement, but the culmination of a generations-long search, a closing of a circle begun by curiosity. In every age, the tools and experiments we devise are shaped by the questions we dare to ask. When we wondered about our origins, we invented radiometric dating and deciphered the fossil record. When we yearned to understand the stars, we built observatories on mountaintops and launched telescopes into orbit. Each generation inherits not only knowledge, but a toolkit for pushing its boundaries further. There is a humility in this endeavor, a recognition that each answer is provisional, each understanding open to revision. The story of science is not a straight line, but a spiral that revisits old questions from new heights. The ancient scholars of Alexandria could not have imagined the Collider's ring beneath the Alps, just as we, for all our knowledge, cannot glimpse the full horizon of what is yet to be known. And so, the quest continues. Our experiments grow subtler, our instruments sharper, our theories more encompassing. Yet the heart of the matter remains unchanged. A willingness to ask, to listen, to probe the darkness with a patient light. The unknown recedes, but never vanishes. With each step forward, we find new mysteries waiting, like stars flickering at the edge of dawn. Beyond the walls of laboratories and libraries, this search for comprehension is a deeply human act. It is the child's first why, echoing through the years, the mathematicians' scribbled equations, the astronomers' long vigil beneath the wheeling constellations. It is the recognition that for all our tools and triumphs, the universe is not a puzzle to be solved, but a story to be lived and retold. What then lies ahead? What boundaries remain to be crossed? What questions yet to be asked? As the night deepens and the instruments fall silent, we turn our gaze outward and inward toward the next horizon, where new experiments await and comprehension, ever elusive, beckons us onward. There is a peculiar hush that settles over the mind when it gazes, unblinking, into the vastness of what it does not know. It is not the hush of defeat or resignation, but a hush heavy with possibility, a kind of pregnant silence that brims with the pulse of questions yet unformed. In the intimate darkness before sleep, as the world's edges blur, it is perhaps easiest to sense this hush. For in the absence of daylight certainties, the unknown comes softly to sit at the edge of the bed. It is not a ghost, not an adversary, but a companion as ancient as thought itself. This is the music of our ignorance, a symphony without a final chord, whose melody weaves through every era, every question, every dream. For as long as there have been humans, eyes glinting in the firelight, voices murmuring beneath the stars, there has been the unknown, and with it an ache to reach beyond it. The child asks, "Why does thunder follow lightning?" The sage wonders, "What lies beyond death?" The scientist whispers, "What is dark matter, dark energy, the origin of life?" Each question is a note in the great composition of not knowing, a testament to the fact that the boundaries of our understanding are not walls, but windows. Through them we glimpse the boundless landscapes of possibility, the ever-receding horizons that beckon us forward. It is tempting to think of ignorance as a flaw, a species of blindness to be corrected, something to be conquered and eliminated, and yet the longer one contemplates the history of discovery, the more apparent it becomes that ignorance is not merely an obstacle, but a wellspring. It is the dark soil from which all curiosity springs, the fertile emptiness that allows the seeds of wonder to take root. The unknown is not the enemy of knowledge, it is its mother. Consider the ancient Greeks, whose city-states hummed with debate and whose philosophers were, in a sense, professional connoisseurs of ignorance. Socrates, the gadfly of Athens, wandered the agora, questioning artisans, poets, politicians. His wisdom, he claimed, was to know that he knew nothing. This was not a pose of false modesty, but the recognition of an essential truth. The more one learns, the vaster the unknown becomes. Each answer births new questions, and the perimeter of knowledge, like the edge of a growing circle, touches ever more of the infinite darkness beyond. Socrates' admission was not despair, but liberation. To know that one knows nothing is to be free of the illusion of mastery, to remain supple and open to the world's inexhaustible strangeness. For him, ignorance was not a void, but a wind that filled the sails of the mind, carrying it into uncharted waters. Centuries later, this attitude would resurface in the laboratories and observatories of the scientific revolution. Copernicus peered through his calculations and saw that the Earth circled the Sun, not the other way around, a revelation that shattered the comfortable certainties of the cosmos and replaced them with new, vertiginous questions. What is the Sun? What holds the planets in their courses? What lies beyond the stars? Each answer, far from closing the book, flung open new chapters, each more mysterious than the last. Ignorance does not merely precede discovery. It persists in its wake, expanding as our knowledge expands. When Newton formulated his law of gravitation, he illuminated the mechanism of planetary motion, but was forced to admit, hypotheses non fingo, I feign no hypothesis, for the underlying cause of gravity. In other words, I describe what happens, but I do not know why. His equations worked, but the reason behind their truth eluded him. Even as the light of understanding spreads, so too does the shadow of what we do not know. The candle's glow reveals the darkness beyond, and the brighter it burns, the more darkness it throws into relief. This paradox is not unique to physics. In biology, the mapping of the human genome, the grand decoding of our genetic instruction book, was hailed as the dawn of a new era, and yet it quickly became clear that knowing the letters of life's alphabet was only the beginning. How do genes interact? Which sequences are truly functional, and which are the genetic equivalent of cosmic background noise? What, in fact, is the full story of life's emergence from chemicals on a young Earth? The genome, once fully mapped, revealed itself to be less a solved puzzle than a newly discovered continent, bristling with unexplored valleys and rivers. The unknown, then, is not a diminishing territory, shrinking with each advance of science. It is rather a vast and supple fabric that stretches as we tug at its edges. Each thread we pull reveals new knots, new patterns, new spaces where our understanding is thin or absent altogether. Our ignorance, like the universe itself, does not contract as we explore. It grows. And what of the cosmos? After centuries of gazing upward, mapping constellations, charting the motions of planets, we know now that the visible universe, the stars and galaxies we can see, is but a sliver of all that exists. Most of the cosmos is made of dark matter and dark energy, substances whose names are admissions of ignorance. Dark, unseen, unknown, undetectable except by their gravitational whisperings. Energy, a placeholder for a force we cannot yet describe, a mathematical fudge that keeps our equations balanced but tells us little of what it actually is. We live, to borrow a phrase from the physicist Marcelo Gleiser, on an island of knowledge surrounded by an ever-widening sea of the unknown. If this is humbling, it is also exhilarating, for the unknown is not static. It is not a fixed wall we are forever doomed to beat our heads against. It is a living, shifting landscape, changed by every step we take upon it. Sometimes, when the fog lifts for a moment, we see a little further. Sometimes we stumble into a valley we did not know was there, but always there is more beyond. This ever-expanding ignorance is not merely a feature of science and philosophy, but of all creative endeavor. The poet, the painter, the composer, each is drawn to the edge of what can be expressed. Each works in the shadow of what cannot yet be said. The act of creation is a negotiation with the unknown, an attempt to give form to what lies just beyond the reach of language, color, sound. The blank page, the empty canvas, the silence before the first note. These are not voids to be feared, but spaces in which possibility thrives. It is the same with invention and technology. The Wright brothers did not begin with the certainty that flight was possible. They began with a hunch, a sense that the problem was not solved, that the answer lay somewhere in the unknown. Their first experiments were failures, stumbles in the darkness, but each failure illuminated a new aspect of the problem. What is lift? What is drag? How does one balance a machine in the air? The answers, when they came, did not erase ignorance. They deepened it, for powered flight raised new questions of speed, safety, and the very nature of travel. The unknown is not a wall, but a horizon that recedes as we approach. This symphony of ignorance is not merely a human phenomenon. It is written into the fabric of the universe itself. Quantum mechanics, that most successful and perplexing of physical theories, tells us that not all things can be known, not even in principle. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle is not a statement about the limits of our instruments, but about the nature of reality. To know a particle's position precisely is to lose all knowledge of its momentum, and vice versa. The universe, at its most fundamental level, is structured so that ignorance is inescapable, woven into the warp and weft of being. Einstein once remarked, with a mixture of awe and resignation, "The most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible." Yet even he, with his towering intellect, was always aware of the limits of understanding. The more he learned, the more he realized what he did not know. The edge of knowledge is a place of perpetual marvel and perpetual humility. In the quiet hours of the night, when the chatter of certainty fades, one might be tempted to feel small, diminished by the immensity of what is not known. But this is a misreading of our place in the story. The unknown is not a measure of our inadequacy, but a testament to our courage. To stand before it, unafraid, is to honor the legacy of all who have ever wondered, all who have ever dared to ask. For each question, no matter how naive, is an act of creation, a reaching out into the darkness, a setting of one more note in the great symphony. And what a symphony it is, filled with unresolved chords, with melodies that spiral away into silence, with harmonies that tremble on the edge of perception. The beauty of this music lies not in its completion, but in its openness, its refusal to be closed. Like a river that winds forever toward the horizon, our ignorance flows onward, carrying us with it. We are not the composers of this music, nor merely its audience. We are its instruments, vibrating with the energy of questions. There is perhaps a kind of wisdom in learning to dwell in ignorance, not to seek it for its own sake, nor to glorify it as an end, but to recognize it as the necessary ground of all becoming. The philosopher Karl Popper likened knowledge to a searchlight cutting through the darkness. The brighter the beam, the more darkness we see. Each discovery is a revelation not only of what is, but of what is not yet understood. The horizon moves, and with it, so do we. In the end, the unknown is not a deficit, but a gift. It is the reason we invent, explore, imagine. It is the source of every story we tell, every experiment we design, every dream we dare to dream. To be human is to live at the boundary of what is known and what is not, to be forever poised between the comfort of answers and the lure of new questions. As you drift now into the borderlands of sleep, that liminal space where certainty dissolves and the world grows strange again, feel the hush of the unknown settle softly around you. Let it be not a weight, but a gentle invitation, the promise of new music yet to be heard, new paths yet to be found. The stars above are not silent, nor is the darkness empty. It is filled with the whisper of unasked questions, the music of all that is yet to come. And in that music we are, each of us, both audience and composer, forever at the edge of understanding, listening for the next note. As our journey through the shimmering edges of what can never be known softly drifts to a close, may your thoughts float like stardust, gently settling in the quiet cosmos of your mind. Let these mysteries, like a comet tail fading into the hush of space, inspire peaceful wonder until we meet again for more Dreamtime tales beneath the endless night sky.